Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ann Moser. I'm a librarian at UW-Madison. I've been here at Madison maybe too long, 16, 17 years. I'm also education coordinator for Wisconsin Sea Grant, which means I bring Great Lakes literacy out and about to the state of Wisconsin. And I am a really avid bioblitzer. I started doing it at the start of COVID. Our program supports teachers and families and learners of all sorts. And we were sort of stuck all of a sudden and wanted to support our stakeholders. And so my colleague in Minnesota said, let's do a bioblitz. And we're like, okay, during that unprecedented time of COVID. And now we're about to, I think our sixth or seventh annual BioBlitz will occur in the spring. So it's really fun. I'm an outdoors person. I love, love, love getting outdoors, being in nature. And I have to say, it really has deepened my appreciation for all the things that I hold dear. So this is a presentation I put together for libraries, but there may be others on our webinar today. All of my remarks apply to anyone that works with learners of all sorts, kids, families, adults. It's sort of general remarks for everyone.
Hey,
Oh,
And
sorry, Sam. Yep.
oh yeah, I just wanted to jump in. We were seeing presenter mode of your slides. I didn't
Oh,
catch that
that's
before, but
hilarious. So, okay. I'm embarrassed. You guys want to watch my notes? Because that would be kind of fun. Let me see if I can change that. I hope everyone's smiling because I'm not happy with PowerPoint today. So, um,
I'm
okay,
smiling
so
in.
you're smiling. Okay. It's the reason I don't really like uh, webinars because I just would rather see everyone laughing and enjoying themselves when Anne wanders through technology. Let's see. You might get the presenter mode. Let's see what happens. I have the double monitor, and so for some reason it's going. Okay. All right. Let's try our sharing now, shall we? La 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 la. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I think you're seeing the right screen.
There we go. Yep, that looks great.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Isn't technology the greatest thing since sliced bread? So, as I said, we're using the Q&A. So, if any questions come up, please go ahead and post them. We'll try to tackle those at the end. And again, I already invited Sam. So, or introduced Sam. The last thing is that these slides will live on the Google site that we've created, and I'll mention that at the end. So if there's anything you want to capture from our conversations today, these will, if there's something you want to note, the slides will be online for you. So let's get started. I already asked this, but if there's anyone newly joining, let me know if you have already participated in a BioBlitz or joined our webinar last year. That would be wonderful to know. So as I mentioned, I work for Wisconsin Sea Grant. And did that advance the slide? Uh,
Still seeing the title slide.
oh, good gravy. Okay. Here we go. Oh boy, this is like, all right. So
There.
Wisconsin Water Library at UW is part of Wisconsin Sea Grant, and many of you may be familiar with Extension, where the university has an extension service that takes what happens at the university and brings it out for the benefit of all community members in Wisconsin. Well, it's an incredible service, especially when you live in rural areas and you have a question about your well, or your child wants to do 4-H, or a myriad of services. Well, I'm a huge fan of Extension, and many people are not familiar with Sea Grant, which is Extension service for water, which is incredibly important in our state, obviously. And so we fund original research, and then we take that research as extension people and hopefully help to educate, to work with community members to solve problems. And so I like to just give a little shout out to Sea Grant because they are an incredible state secret. We do great work, and we love it, and we're passionate about education and the environment. And the greatest joy of doing this work is partnering with people like Samantha and the different UW science stars on campus, and really hopefully bringing education and benefit to everyone. So, what I'm going to cover, hopefully in an hour, is the basics to get you started to be able to do a bioblitz after an hour together. And hopefully, I'll demystify some of this stuff. And these are the list of things that we will cover. It's a pretty long list, but it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to hopefully give you the definitions, the techniques, et cetera, the tools to make it happen for you. So I'll talk about what this is, a bioblitz, because we'll be doing community science, and I'll kind of define that for you. I will define that for you. Our community science is about taking observations about biodiversity. What does that mean? Hopefully, I'll give you some really good reasons to participate. So, sort of some fun ideas, inspirations. And then I'll describe 3 different apps to use to participate in the Science Festival BioBlitz, including our old school form of pencil and paper. And then because I've been doing this for a while, I have some tricks and hints on how to make really good observations because I have failed quite a bit. Um, and hopefully you'll appreciate that when we get there. And then we'll talk a little bit about setting it up in your library or in your classroom with your students, in your non-formal setting, wherever it is that you might want to do this as part of the Science Festival and also anytime year round. All right, so just a plug for our amazing Science Festival. So it's incredible. It's a 10-day event, and the BioBlitz starts the Science Festival off on October 16 at sunrise, and it closes the festival on October 26th at sunset. Now, however, I just want to say, of course, we want you to BioBlitz for 10 days, but if you're new, you just want to try it, you can design your own BioBlitz with an hour, within a day, within multiple days. You can empower your patrons, your learners to do bioblitzing for the whole 10 days. So don't think that you're here and you're going to sign up for something that's 10 days, because that might be a little overwhelming, but you'll see the flexibility of it. And how these observations are collected within that time and how it interacts with a project on iNaturalist. So these are a lot of terms I'm throwing out, but I'll make sure that you understand and define all of those. As I said, this amazing BioBlitz kicks off the festival and closes it, but there are tons and tons of events during the week. And I think many of you have already signed up to be part of the festival. You're holding something, perhaps you're borrowing the Science in the Bag. Yay, what a great service. You might be holding a talk in your space. That's what I love about something like the Science Festival. It's flexible. It's just bringing science to your learners or your patrons or your community. Yay. And I have to say, I am a librarian who studied art history in college, and I'm not a scientist. But I think something like the Science Festival, something like the BioBlitz is such a quote friendly, easy way to demystify science and to make it just really fun. Let's say it that way. So if you are doing any sort of festival activity in 2025, if you would go ahead and share it in the Q&A, that would be wonderful, to kind of see what people are already planning on doing. Now, just a little warning per se is that this is not a technology presentation. There is technology in it, but obviously we're in this webinar technology, and I can't help everyone one-on-one right now. And I have to say, things have gotten easier and easier in the 6 years I've been doing bioblitzing. So don't get overwhelmed or worried or upset about like, hopefully you have someone to rely on. Um, And also, I'm a librarian, so unfortunately, I'm pathologically helpful. So if you get stuck and you go, Anne, I don't really understand this, just reach out. I'm happy to help you navigate any questions you might have with the app or whatever. So don't hesitate. Okay, so let's get started, blah, blah, blah. What is a bioblitz, right? That's the first question we should probably answer. And basically, a bioblitz is an event. It's a party about science. This event is defined in a few ways. You have to have a beginning and end. You have to have an activity, which in this case is to record biodiversity. And you have to have a geographic region defined. So, and I'll tell you a little bit about each of those pieces, but that's basically it, an event with a time, an activity, and a place. So I'll show the Great Lakes BioBlitz is how I got started bioblitzing, and it has the same components. We begin in the spring on Earth Day, and we run for 4 weeks. So that's a pretty long BioBlitz, right? And our geographic region is super large because we do this across the entire watershed, Great Lakes watershed. So 8 states and 2 provinces. So that's a pretty big geographic area. But we have the same activity. We are collecting data on biodiversity within that region. Now, for the Science Festival BioBlitz, a little bit more manageable. As I said, it has a beginning and end, so that's the 16th to the 26th. Our geographic region is our absolutely incredible state of Wisconsin, and we have the same activity. We're collecting data on biodiversity. So pretty straightforward. So you may want to set up a BioBlitz. You'll pick your beginning and end. You can choose this project. You can do it for an hour a day, etc. You can choose a different region, but within the state of Wisconsin, etc. So a lot of flexibility with bioblitzing. And what we're doing is community science. That's what a bioblitz is about. And it's really important to understand this concept because I think it helps to demystify this idea of doing science, right? What is it, right? Like, let's define what it is. So I've seen a lot of definitions. I kind of like this one the best. It's scientific research conducted in whole or in part by non-professional scientists. So I am a science librarian. I'm a non-professional scientist for sure. And I do science when I do community science. It's also been described as public participation in scientific research. So in this case, our community science is to collect observations, photographs of biodiversity. If anybody's done community science of any sort, you want to go ahead and put it in the Q&A. I'd love to hear what you guys have worked on. And just a note about this, what I think is really neat and a very good message for your learners or your community is that you're doing real science. It's not as if this is fake science. This is real science. You are following protocols of science, and we'll kind of talk about that when we look at the way the app works. So it's kind of neat. You're actually becoming scientists. And I've underlined 2 points in whole or in part. There is some community science that is myself going out and doing observations. I don't work with a scientist in those particular instances. Sometimes community science can be me going out and helping with an invasive species pull, for example, cleaning up a natural area. Sometimes they'll have a scientist on site with us to make sure we understand which plants are which. So that would be done in partnership with a professional scientist. And there are so many great examples of community science. So any kind of count, like a bird count, a frog and toad population survey we have here in Wisconsin. I mentioned invasive species removal. There's water quality testing. Perhaps you do that with your students, or I suppose even if you did it on your well, right? That is you doing the science. I love the example of cocoa rods because it's working with data. So there's a high school version of it. Students will do some data collection and report that data about climate. And I will particularly cover the Urban Canid project here in Madison because I think it's an excellent idea about to illustrate how important community science is to our body of knowledge about what we know about the world. It's kind of a really cool example. So our community science is going to be collecting biodiversity data. So what is that? Now, this is when I get honest with you. I went to Catholic school and I didn't really know that there was biodiversity outside of the Amazon until very recently. That was the science education that I had when I was a kid in Catholic school. Um, but I have since learned that it happens everywhere. And it's basically the variety of living things in a defined area. So it's the plants, the animals, the bugs, the fungi, the trees, the whatever that lives in a particular defined area. And what's important about biodiversity is that it is used to indicate health of an ecosystem. That community that lives together in that area, they use measures of biodiversity to tell whether or not that area is healthy. So an incredible measure of our ecosystem health. So again, another good reason to participate in something like a bioblitz. So what is a healthy ecosystem? So they define biodiversity health either as high or low. So high biodiversity means there's a large number of species, and a low biodiversity, surprise, is a small number of species. And I'm a visual learner, and maybe you are too. So I love these little holes. So I'm going to give you a moment to reflect. So we have two different ecosystems. Which area in your mind has a high biodiversity? So I would really like you guys to throw this in the Q&A, please, and see what you say. Um, so we have a lot of great votes for A. I need to make this harder, obviously. Yeah, pretty obvious, I suppose. Great. Yes. And so what you're seeing here, area A, though it has less circles, there's more color, right? Blues and purples and greens and some odd orange and then a yellow. So yeah, so obviously in area B, lots and lots of more dots, but two colors. And it's my mission in life to convince kids that we have a really great, incredible broad diversity of life here in Wisconsin, here in the Great Lakes. Because I always go out and I always ask questions of kids before I start teaching or doing a program. And I say, what lives in the Great Lakes? And the first thing people say inevitably is either sharks or whales. And you're like, no, we have lake sturgeon, a dinosaur fish. We have, so many beautiful species. So we are really lucky here in this temperate area. Really, really lucky. So that could be a part of the reason why you might want to do a bioblitz, right? So this idea of biodiversity, of course, it indicates health. And there are some really, really great reasons why we think why biodiversity is important to our communities. So reason number one, I have four of them. You guys all probably have your own. But species depend on each other. When we're in elementary school, we learn about the predator-prey relationship. What happens to that predator if that prey population is decimated, right? Starvation, et cetera. That interdependency is really, really important. This picture from 2021 I took of a nurse log with lichen on it. That lichen is dependent on that nurse log to survive. So there's a interdependency we see in that photograph, and there's a lot of examples of this. Now, this may be a surprise, but it does support tourism and recreation. I kind of make a leap of, I'm going to make an assumption that perhaps biodiversity supports your communities um, with through hunting or fishing or whatever it is that draws people to your community, for example, in to interact with nature. People are looking for diversity. They're not all going to come and hunt for deer. Perhaps there are people that are interested in turkey hunting or pheasant hunting. Those, when we see the populations of deer get out of whack, we see crazy, we see that the biodiversity is not balanced. It doesn't help with tourism and recreation. So it's really important for our communities to have healthy biodiversity to support these activities. Now, this is something new that I learned about, which I think is incredibly important. And I think this picture tells a really interesting story. So, uh, this photograph has a stream with some stream banks, some of it looking a little eroded on one side. But if you look along the stream bank, I'm seeing different species of trees and bushes and flora that is supporting those stream bank. Because of the different types and species of flora along the bank, what that is doing in a flooding situation is supporting the stream side. So that's protecting this stream from flooding, from erosion. If it was all monoculture there, a flooding event would happen and it would just get decimated. So having a different set of species along the stream bank stabilizes it, it limits sedimentation, so that there's probably a lot of different examples of this, but I thought that this was a really visual example where you can kind of see there on the right where it's not working so well, but on the left you can kind of see a tree and some bushes. So it really does help build resilience. This picture really tells that story. Excuse me, I'm just getting over COVID and I'm getting such a runny nose. So pardon me. And then my fourth reason is one I think that might not be as surprising to you. You've probably seen this before, but um, many of our medicines we use today are rooted in the natural world, literally. Aspirin is one example people use. It was, discovered thousands of years ago to have analgesic properties. And today we have aspirin because of that species. And so there are other examples like that. And who knows what else is available in our biodiversity that might be able to help humankind. So those are four reasons that I can think of. And then there are probably many, many more. All right. So I love this part because I get to talk about why to participate. And I like to start with joy. Um, as I said in the beginning, I love to be outside. I love to hike. I was like that little kid who was always outside, my mom and dad screaming to come home. And I have to say, even at my old crotchety age, I have gotten a lot of joy from bioblitzing. It really has given me a new appreciation for the places that I live, the places that I walk. And I'm going to return to this photograph at the end and explain where this joy came from. But one thing that I think can happen with bioblitzing is that your community might be doing science without even realizing it, right? They're out taking pictures, they're seeing things, they're observing things, which I think in terms of education is like kind of an inspiring thought, right? Getting kids outside, getting families outside, doing this together. But really, the reason we do this is to advance science. That's the bottom line. Now, the best way that I can explain how this advances science is to use an example. So I'm going to show two different observations, one from 2020 and one from 2021. And you'll see the beloved Jack in the Pulpit, one of my favorite plants. This is during the spring bioblitz that we do with the Great Lakes Bioblitz. And I always, every year, go near here in our office in Madison, down the Lakeshore Path to Picnic Point. I have a friend that lives there. We wander around and make observations. And it's a beautiful research area. So there's always, they take good care of it, and there's a lot of biodiversity in the area. And so I'm always encountering Jack in the pulpits, which makes me really happy. So you can see that I've observed them, this little green dot. Hopefully you can see that. You can kind of see I'm in the same spot each year. So the screen that you're seeing is sort of the dashboard, right? So I took this picture, and the algorithm said, the computer said, I see Jack in the pulpit. And you can kind of see people agreed with that, right? Same thing in 2021. Now, I want you to note the date, right? In 2020, the date I took that picture was May 19th. The day I took it in 2021 was April 27th. So that's kind of interesting to me because it immediately tells me that when you look at the photographs, the phenology is continuing and the plant looks very at the similar stage in its development. But the observation is what, 3 weeks different? Was there a lot more snow and cold in 2020? Were plants emerging later? Is this something related to climate? Um, now, okay, so that's the layperson making kind of looking at this observation. But at the top of both of these observations, you'll see a note that says research grade. And going back to the bottom where you see with Soda Boys and Holly Sparkle Farm and by Baker agreeing with my computer generated observation, what that means is that this is a real observation. This is a research grade observation. It's kind of the gold star you're looking for because when an observation becomes a research grade, it means that a scientist can draw that data. If they're looking to collect a whole bunch of data, they can draw it and use it in scientific research. So it's kind of cool to think like, wow, I have a little story that I collected that can be used in science. I think it's a kind of interesting little, makes me feel happy that I can contribute to science that way. Yeah, so and we saw this actually during the BioBlitz because we were working with our colleagues in Minnesota Sea Grant, and because it was COVID, we were meeting all the time, like trying to figure all this out. And our colleagues in Minnesota were complaining because when they were looking at the observations across the entire BioBlitz, they could see the observations of particular species moving westward. And that 2020 year, I think, must have been cold, and they were all sitting there still in snow. And some of the observations eastward were starting to appear, and they're still under snow. So it was kind of interesting when you could see this body of data together. And all it takes is me going out and taking a photograph. So I hope that gives you kind of inspiration to understand why you might want to do this kind of work. I do want to share the UW Urban Canid project example because I think it really shows how you and I and everyone here on this call can do this work and really, really help science. Um, there's a researcher in Madison. His name is David Drake. He is a professor of wildlife ecology. And in 2022 or 2020, when we set this whole thing up, we wanted to do a webinar to explain to the participants that might sign up why you should do this. And so I, as a librarian, searched um, scientists who use iNaturalist data from BioBlitz, and his name was the first link. And so he's published scientific articles in journals about this particular approach. And the thing is about canids, for example, here in Madison, we're encountering more and more foxes and coyotes, and if you are not used to seeing wildlife like that, it might be really upsetting, or it might be really startling. And so Dr. Drake's goal with this is to understand the behavior of the animals when they interact with humans. So he decided he can't go out and sit outside in nature for days on end and understand the behavior of these canids. He set up a bioblitz project, which is what you'll set up with the bioblitz for the science festival. And he invited people to make observations when they encounter canids. I'm sitting on my back porch and I see a coyote in my yard, take a picture. And so I hope I explained that well enough, because this was a researcher wanting to understand how humans and canids interact. And what better way to do that is to have a human take a picture when they encounter a canid. And he can look at these pictures and see their behavior. What time are they coming into people's yards? What part of the yard are they visiting? Are they going to the garbage? Are they investigating trash? Are they running away when the photograph is taken, etc.? So for Dr. Drake, he can use what he learns with these photographs quite easily to understand how the canids behave and also how the humans behave. So I think that's a really good way of understanding. He's going to draw on all those research grade observations and take all of that information as a body of knowledge to make some recommendations about how to approach canid management. So he can collect all this data and use it to help decision makers form policy. Like, so maybe the city of Madison needs to say, okay, everybody, we have a lot of canids. This is what you do to keep everybody safe, to keep your pets safe, etc. So I think that's a very, very interesting, clear example of how this work that we might do with community science can really help regular science to support regular science. And there's other reasons to do this as well, beyond just the science. Well, of course, it's all science, right? But it's a really good way to engage people. Again, it's pretty straightforward. All you're doing is taking a picture. Hopefully, you're just grabbing people as they're going outside. Um, it's relatively low cost. Of course, you can use pencil and paper. You have to have an iPhone to do it on the app on your phone. That's not low cost, but it's relatively low cost. And the literature says for science, it is very helpful because it can find rare or undocumented species. And just so you know, if that does occur in iNaturalist, they are immediately hidden. So people don't go running after them. But there's many examples of that happening. I think that example of the Jack in the Pulpit observations is a very simple way of thinking about how iNaturalist data can help us understand climate. It's pretty well known that scientists generally like to go to the cool places like Yellowstone or General Custer National Park or whatever. They don't necessarily do as much research in urban biodiversity. So this really helps us to understand what's in our backyards. And it adds to the local knowledge. And I add this as I have a good example of that. As we've started to do this with Sea Grant, I was approached by someone in the city, I think it was the city of Appleton Parks. They were putting together a brand new park, Arrowhead Park. I think if anybody is from the Fox Valley, please weigh in and let me know if I'm right. But Arrowhead Park was brand new. And obviously, it didn't look beautiful like it might look in 10 or 15 years after everything grows in. But they wanted from the start to engage the community, get people passionate about it, understanding it, and they wanted to do bioblitzing every year because it had the possibility of engaging community members. And also, they wanted to document how the biodiversity in this park changed from year to year so they can watch, hopefully, species coming back to the space, et cetera. So I think that's kind of an interesting example. And then for me, as a parent especially, get those kids out outdoors, right? It's a way to get outside connection with nature. But again, back to the joy thing, right? It really, I hope, brings a deeper understanding of where I live, where you live. And I just really, really enjoy it, I have to say. This tree is a good example of that joy. We were at Donald Park in Dane County. We were walking along and I was bioblitzing and I was super annoying all my friends. And one friend said, "Hey, look at that tree. Is that something you would take an observation of?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And I took a picture and I realized what I was seeing as a beaver was like taking care of that dead tree, right? So it kind of stuck with me, and I made my husband go back a few weeks later, and that tree was down. And I was like, yeah, that was so cool. It just gave me this like moment of like, wow, that is like kind of a fun thing to make an observation about. So hopefully if you bioblitz or your learners or community does that, I hope that happens to you. All right, so let's get into some interesting why the library? Why with your learners, right? I think that's maybe in your mind, like, why should I do this for those of you that work in your community libraries? Let's take a look at that, right? Okay, libraries are a perfect fit. Most libraries in the state of Wisconsin have really deep connections with your community members, with your patron base. What a way to connect your patrons with your community. I didn't I think that librarians and libraries need to shout and tell people that we are essential learning environments. We are classrooms of our own type. And it's really important that we are proud of that mission because we do so much education. All of this stuff, kindergarten readiness, homework help, helping seniors. We are educators, and what better way to educate than do a bioblitz? And many, many communities, especially in our rural areas, you guys are really the center of the community. And I've been out and about doing library visits forever in this job, and I see it time and time again where a town of 500, the library is that center place. So it's a really great place for a bioblitz. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty so we finish on time. I showed you kind of that desktop with those observations. There are two ways. You can do it on your desktop or you can do it on your iPhone or your Android. They both have apps or programs that you can do it either way. Um, Now, the iNaturalist phone thing is super easy, and they've recently upgraded it. And when you look at they have maybe an app store, the iNaturalist Classic or the one with the dark green logo. The dark green logo is super straightforward. So if you decide to go that route, go with the dark green logo and you'll see that, see it says Great Lakes Anne here. This is sort of all my list of observations. This is what the desktop looks like. I do use that one once in a while. And both places have the similar capabilities. You can do the same things on both. But for walking around, the phone app is really pretty straightforward. And I'll show you again, this isn't a technology presentation, but I'll show you some main things that when you get started on it, you can hopefully recall that. So here is um, the desktop version. Oh, I hope that I kept that slide in here. Yeah, I did. Okay, so this is a desktop version of iNaturalist. And if you see like at the top, it says this bar up here, iNaturalist. This is sort of one of the ways of navigation. There I am. People have been recently confirming my observations, all this stuff. There's an upload thing if you decide to upload your photos this way. And this is my particular bar along here, home, profile, all of my observations, etc., including projects, which is where you would access the Science Festival project. So it's pretty straightforward. A lot of us, I don't need to explain much to librarians. You guys are brilliant. Um, this is the project for the Science Festival. And again, I believe all of these links have been sent to you. They're on the Google site. They're all over the Science Festival website as well. But this is the homepage for the project. And you'll see up here it says leave. You can join and leave. So hopefully that number will go way up after this webinar. You join it. And once you start making, if you join it, you make those observations and they will be added to this project within that time frame, within that geographic area. And similarly to the desktop, which is probably what you'll mostly use, is the iPhone or the Android app. And it's super straightforward. Here is the home page in the middle for our project. So you can kind of see last year there were more than 6,000 observations, all these different species. Fried chicken. I think that was not quite. Oh, that's funny. So some fungi, other stuff. So here's Anne making observations. Do you see this? So if I were to get this app, it's just basically click and it uploads it into the project. Again, this isn't technology. I can walk through it with anybody that you'd like to. It's actually really straightforward to use. And on the right, you'll see, okay, you can use your, if I press observe, you can use your camera, you can do it offline by uploading from your photo library. You can even upload sounds. So I haven't had much luck making research grade with sounds, but that is a possibility. Now, that was like the 2-second presentation of something I could do for an hour, but just know, download those apps and just play around with it. But when you do, make sure you join the Science Festival project. That is the most important thing. To be part of the Science Festival BioBlitz, as long as you join, any observations that are made during that time will be part of the project. So I just want to give a shout out for another app called Seek. It does not connect with the Science Festival project. So if observations are made here, they will not go part of it. But if you're interested in bioblitzing and you're working with a lot of families and kids, I just want to make you aware of Seek because it is so easy for kids to use. You just kind of put your phone out and click, and it tells the kid or you what that species is. And I find that as I bioblitzed in a particular time, I want to keep learning during the school year, during the year when I travel. And using Seek for me personally is another way to deepen my appreciation for the nature that I'm seeing as I'm wandering around hiking or whatever. So just keep that in mind as something to keep in your back pocket. If you do a BioBlitz and people get super excited, but they're like, remember this option. Now, for the BioBlitz, though, there is a second app, which is very much old school. And I would like Sam, when we're all finished, to weigh in how the Science Festival would like to interact with your paper observations, but you can do a BioBlitz and have people do it on pencil and paper. They don't have to have all this technology. This form is available both on the Google site that I've been referencing and also the festival website right there on the main page. Have the people print it out. As they're making their observations, they can write the time, where it was, and make a picture of it. Really good for kids. And then display them, right? Have BioBlitz and have a whole display of all these observations. And then at the end, Sam, please weigh in on how you would like to have this interact with the Science Festival project. So don't forget to let me have you answer that. But just so you know, like maybe you're a teacher in a classroom and you want to have, you want to do BioBlitzing, you want to do it, there's not devices one-on-one for everyone. This is another really, really good option. So Just making sure that anyone that wants to participate, maybe a grandpa wants to go out with their grandchild, there's a good option for you. Now, just a quick note on some of the things I've learned about making observations. Okay, so I think I said we're going for research grade. And in order to do that, we take a photograph. You put it into the app, and then the computer, that whole AI business that's going on, this algorithm will ID your observation. But like AI, garbage in, garbage out. And this picture on the right is from Owen Conservancy by my house. And the app was like, I don't know what you're looking at here. And what you're seeing is this really, really, really bland picture with a lot of green and about 12 different plants. Okay, so not a good observation. So make sure when you're making your observation, you be as specific to the plant that you're looking for. Otherwise, the app will say to you, come on, get a little bit closer, a little more, kind of help the algorithm out a little bit. So just that's like an honest uh I just opened my heart to show you what I'm sort of a mediocre observer sometimes. But tip number one, so that I guess that's tip number 0. But tip number 1, when you are taking close-up pictures, beyond just like, you know, being clear, having one plant or whatever in the picture, sometimes you need something for reference, right? So this is my daughter's boot next to some scat. And yes, you can take pictures of scat. The computer can identify them, and I think it did, in fact, identify that. Um, Oh boy, it's been a while. I got to make sure I take really good notes. But yes, Colleen was like, I have to put my shoe there. Yeah, so something as reference. My husband sometimes when we do it, will put his hand down. So the algorithm gets a sense of size. So just something pretty straightforward. If you really want to get into this, you can use a ruler for size. That's another one. That seems a lot of work. Seems like Colleen's boot was another a little bit easier. But in this case, where Marty Kitson, our partner in Minnesota, found this image from the Department of Natural Resources up there in the Duluth area. And these observations are shared with you showing that it's hard for the algorithm to identify which species it is, and having the size there will help the computer a little bit. Another tip, number 3, is to take photos at different angles. And I have found this not just with insects, but with plants as well. If you turn the phone or however you're taking the observation, it'll just capture different characteristics, and it'll help the algorithm ID your picture. And it also will help the humans that have to finish up the identification as well. And no matter how you see a plant, and you take about 5 million pictures of it because it's so beautiful, like this trillium. Now, even if you have more than one photo, just put one in there, because that's the count that they want. You found this one plant at this one time, at this part of its development, just one photo. That's all the community science really wants. So let's do this in your learning environment, in your library. So here we go. This is how you set one up. Your activity is actually defined for you because the bioblitz we're doing is to observe biodiversity. So number 1 is set. You need to pick a beginning and end, and then you have to define your geographic region. Okay? So basically, one thing is already decided for you. You have to do the 2 other ones. So record biodiversity, there you go. You defined your beginning and end. So I've seen a lot of different examples. You can do it for an hour. You can do an hour event. You can do an hour event and send your patrons off home and tell them to continue making observations, because once they join the project, any observations taken in that time frame will be included in the project. But if you want to run a little bioblitz, do it for an hour, do it for a day, do it over the whole 10 days. It can be whatever you feel comfortable defining. But definitely at the end of that time, empower your learners, your patrons to continue making observations, and they will be part of the project, which I think is really kind of a nice way to do a bioblitz. Excuse me, my nose is running again. Oh man. Yeah, so that's your definition. And number 3, pick your geographic region. So you can do it in any way you want. For the Science Festival, choose Wisconsin, anywhere in Wisconsin. You can have your bioblitz on your library grounds. You can have, train your patrons to do it and then send them home to their backyard. You can do it in a local park. You can, walk over to the school. You can do it in a natural area near you, anywhere that's defined by you. So time and place is what you need to define for your bioblitz. Other things to keep in mind when you do this, really important to think, and I think for most librarians I know, and I'm sure for educators that might have joined us, define your audience. Who are you going to work with? Are you going to work with children, families? Perhaps you want to partner with your local elementary school, middle school. I know a lot of libraries do that. You want to think about your method. Do you want to have the app? So if you have the app, be sure you're ready to help your patrons use that app and join the Science Festival project. Don't forget that. And then another thing to think about, which I think libraries do pretty well, and I think other learning environments do really well, is to find a collaborator. Your parks department will jump for this. They would be really happy to work with you. If there's another library, I have seen this time and again in my visits with libraries and libraries, they work together. That's another really great way to do it. Call your nature center with whom you might already have a relationship, another really good idea. Now, we do this just for kind of fun, add a challenge. Have your patrons find something green or something that they know lays eggs or bears fruit, all that kind of stuff. Kind of just add some fun to it. And kids, they love a challenge. It can be anything that you want. And we're librarians, many of us, not all of us, but we love books. There's a lot of really, really great guides out there. If you need any recommendations, just hit me up. I'm happy to help you. And just so you know that when you are working with iNaturalist, so obviously you want to be sure you're keeping privacy concerns in mind. And so if a person has some concerns, make sure they understand that there are geo-privacy settings in iNaturalist. They're pretty straightforward to use. The observations will go into the app, but they'll be in a much broader area, which I haven't looked into this in this last year, but I think that means that those do not become research grade, but it gets the child or whomever involved into the project, into the activity. So this is a page on the Google site, so it has all information on how to set those. And I've been talking about the Google site. It's available for you to use. It's got, well, this is last year's slide. It has the 2025 information on it. It also has some stuff about how to use the iNaturalist. I've included some resources for perhaps using with your learners, perhaps in your classroom. I will upload this recording and the slides into the webinar section. So go ahead if you want to reference those slides like I mentioned, feel free to. If you want to share this video with someone, I'm so happy to have you do that. It'll take a little bit to make sure that the closed captioning is set, but I'll be loading that up there pretty soon, I hope, as quick as I can. And on the Google site is the information about joining the project. Okay, I shared these links just so you know that they're there. Be sure, if you do, to do two things. Join the project on iNaturalist, and most important, submit your BioBlitz event to Samantha. So thank you, miigwech, gracias, merci, all these things. I really appreciate you guys coming and thinking about being iNaturalist people. I would like Sam to weigh in on a couple of things. Sam, I think that you wrote about the paper copies. It looks like you've answered that question, but is there any other things that you wanted to mention to the participants that are here in terms of BioBlitz?
Yeah, thanks so much, Anne. That was wonderful. Always great to hear your ideas about BioBlitz. And yes, I answered the question in the chat about the paper copies, and just to verbally answer as well. We would love to see them, especially the artwork portion of it. I think that's fascinating. But if you want to, if you have paper copies and you'd like to just email a screenshot or a scanned in copy of it, feel free to do that, but we aren't going to require that to, the paper copies won't be included in the observations of our iNaturalist product or project, um, unless they're sent to us, and we'll put them in manually, but we don't want to require paper copies or anything like that. We take pride and joy in knowing that these things are happening during the festival, and that impact is still occurring. So no need to send in paper copies if that isn't desirable. And then I just wanted to reiterate too what you were saying about how libraries should just be shouting from the rooftops of how important and essential they are to their communities. And we totally advocate for that too in the festival. And we see that I just had to look at our numbers. We have 94 libraries currently signed up to host an event during the festival. I think it's a total of like 150 plus events, but it's 94 unique libraries. So I would love to get that to a fun even 100, but and I'm sure we actually will get there, but libraries are just such a huge part of our festival, and anything we can do to help support, provide resources, connections like this great BioBlitz connection that we have, we're all about it, because they are truly at the core of their communities, and should be elevated more so than ever. So. But yeah, thanks to all the
Thanks,
participants for joining this
Sam.
call.
Yeah. Is there any other questions that you want to ask in the Q&A? I see that. Thank you to Sam for doing that. Any other questions anybody has? It looks like we're all happy. I hope that you can participate. I hope that you can get out bioblitzing, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, Anne. This was wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.